Hello and welcome back to another episode of LMScast. My name is Chris Badgett, and today I'm joined with a special guest, Carrie Dils. How are you doing, Carrie?
Good. How are you?
Excellent. Carrie is somebody I first came across in the WordPress community. She's a prolific content creator in many formats, has a lot of awesome multidisciplinary wisdom to share. And she has courses, and she's a teacher on Lynda.com. So we're going to get into kind of how she does that and how she rolls. And Carrie's just an awesome all-around person. So if you ever come across her on the internet or in person, she's super approachable, and it's always great to hang out. So thanks again for coming on the show, Carrie.
Wow. That was an amazing intro. Thank you. You made me sound maybe better than I actually am, but I'll take it.
I think you are that good. I first came across you on when your podcast was called Genesis Office Hours. And so that was when I first came across, and I watched your show, and you just had a lot of great tips, and I was doing similar stuff. I was building websites for clients. I wasn't using Genesis, but it really resonated. I was like, and I could see too, like you had a really, there was a tribe of followers forming around you, and that was quite some time ago. I can't remember how long ago that was, 3-4 years maybe. Was it that long?
Yeah, I think about 3 years ago, and then it morphed into just plain office hours.
Why the change?
So that I didn't have to. That's a good question. So it's, you said it started off as Genesis Office Hours, and so most of my guests that came on were somehow involved using that software. But what we ultimately ended up talking on the podcast was rarely about that software. So I felt like it was limiting the people that might listen to the show. They're like, oh, I don't use Genesis. This podcast isn't for me. When in fact, there was so much great information being shared from my guests that I just ended up axing that to make it a little bit more approachable for anyone that's doing WordPress for their business.
That's awesome. So was that your big first foray into content? Like, are you like a person who likes to talk and speak, or were you like really into blogging? A lot of people get into blogging before they do podcasting. Was that true for you too?
Yeah, I've blogged for several years, and man, writing, I like writing, but it's so time consuming. And podcasting, on the other hand, is you push the record button, talk for an hour, and then you push it out. Of course, as a podcaster, there's more to it than that, but it's another medium for creating content that to me is much simpler and less stressful than actually writing.
I agree. I'm at about a little over 100 episodes too, and it's just so much easier to do this. And I also have some help in terms of somebody who does transcription, post-production, or whatever. Like it gets transcribed, which gets a lot of the SEO benefit, which is fantastic. But I still write blog posts from time to time. From a marketing perspective or whatever, whenever I talk to people who come across LifterLMS or for different reasons come across me, often they say like, oh, I saw you on YouTube, or I was like, how'd you hear about us? Like, I found you on YouTube. I found you on iTunes. I heard your podcast. I had no idea how far these things can go. And because they're a little kind of hard to set up, a lot harder than a blog, I think it just, and you have to get on camera and stuff like that. That it's just not as competitive and whatnot. So I don't know. Did you have a similar experience? Because I'm really focused on this like online course LMS niche, and if you're really focused in Genesis and this freelancer niche, like how did that podcast do for growing your tribe?
Oh my gosh, it's so funny story. The woman that does my transcriptions, she used to work in the corporate headquarters for Dick's Sporting Goods. And she was she was searching YouTube for something appropriate to communicate a message in one of her meetings. And she came across one of my YouTube videos that had nothing to do with WordPress. It was just me being silly. And she ended up using that video in her meeting. And then she's in it turns out she's now left that and is moving into the WordPress space and is connected with me. And it's just a small world. You never know who's out there. I don't know how to actually measure the impact that the podcast has on all my other endeavors. But somehow I feel certain that it's a really important piece of that. And it's something that draws people into other aspects, like my teaching or my blog or something that might not have encountered me somewhere else. So, man, I would love to have actual numbers on that, but I don't know how you could measure that.
Yeah, I haven't been able to measure it either. I mean, because it goes to the website, Twitter, or YouTube, iTunes, Stitcher, all these places. It's like, well, I don't know. I give up. But it seems to be working. So, well, how about another cool thing about podcasting is it seems like it gets you really comfortable with like being on camera, talking to your computer screen all day. I mean, my neighbors are probably walking by the house. They're like, there he is talking to his computer again. But it's actually an acquired skill that, I think it helps you develop as a teacher and as a communicator or whatever. Did you have a similar experience? Do you cringe when you listen to your first podcast episodes or anything like that?
Oh, it's terrible. It's terrible. I only leave it up there as proof that everyone can start with no skill and grow it into something. But yeah, I think it's definitely something that it's a good, you said it more eloquently than I'm trying to say it. So I'm just going to agree with you on that front. And then also say it's much easier when you have a companion that you're talking to, like we're doing right now, as opposed to like those folks that just look at their computer screen and hit record and they're not talking to anyone. That to me, I feel like I sound like an idiot when I try to do that. So I'm much more comfortable with the conversational style, having someone on the other end of my computer screen.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally relate to that. Well, what was the first foray into teaching? Did you do it, especially teaching WordPress and freelancing stuff and all these things? Was it in person? Was it online on your own site? You teach at lynda.com, which we're going to get into in a little bit, but how did you kind of navigate into the teaching side while also being a freelancer or doing your own business?
It's a good question. And it wasn't necessarily anything I did on purpose. I think so when I started my blog, what I would do is just write usually technical how-tos. So whatever it was that I was learning, I would then blog about it. More for myself, because I didn't know who was out there reading it. But over time, I realized, people leaving comments on my blog and stuff like that, like, hey, this was awesome. Thank you. That helped me. I've been trying to understand this and I finally understood it because the way you described it, blah, 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 blah. And I didn't realize it, but that's a form of teaching. And I think, and from there, being part of the WordPress community, applying to speak at WordCamps, which standing up in front of people talking was nerve-wracking. It still gives me sweaty armpits.
Yeah.
But I've gotten a little more comfortable with it. And then, so all that sort of went into teaching, but I didn't call it teaching. I didn't even think of it as teaching. I thought of it more as just sharing my experience, sharing my knowledge. And then Lynda, which we can talk more about, kind of put a formal package around that. And once I had a taste of that, I was like, I like this. This is a really good spot to be in. It's teaching is something I found that I really enjoy, and it's a way to empower other people. And like you said, the reach of your podcast or your YouTube videos, you have no idea how many people that you can impact, but it's just cool to think that you're making a positive dent in someone's world.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, on that note, on how many people you impact, sometimes like I'll get on a sales call and they'll be like, "Is this really Chris Badgett?" I'm like, "Hey, I'm just a normal guy. Like, I just have some videos and website stuff. I'm not a celebrity." But it's interesting how the internet does that or whatever. Um, but I want to get into Lynda in a second. But you mentioned on something like you realized you found a love for teaching and just connecting with people. But it seems like oftentimes the same person is not necessarily the expert, the business person, and then also the teacher. But you're able to juggle all those. Like I know you're way more of a developer than I am, but you're also like a business owner and an entrepreneur, and you do marketing, entrepreneurial projects, um, and then you're like a solid communicator. So how how did you develop those skills either simultaneously or in a different order? And then how do you kind of switch between them? Like, I mean, surely your head's in a different space when you're like doing something in PHP versus like being on the green screen at Lynda or something.
Oh, definitely. Well, first, let me set the record straight. I am not a marketer. I'm a terrible marketer. I hire someone to help me with that. But anybody who's, and I know a lot of people that listen to your podcast are entrepreneurs. So I think the concept of wearing many hats is probably quite familiar to them. And it's, I think that those it's the combination of a lot of little things over time that's kind of, and I'm still learning how to do things, but that's brought me to currently where I am now. So technical skill, I've been developing websites since the late 90s. But I wasn't teaching it. I couldn't have taught it at that point in time. Also, I've always kind of had that entrepreneurial spirit, but didn't have any actual business savvy other than, you can't spend all the money you make. You got to set some aside in your coin box. And, over time and experience in different jobs. And I did a stint at Starbucks where I was part of their management, part of a local management team. I got to do a lot of employee training, which I found was a whole lot of fun. And also learned how to just run a business. So how to look at a P&L and understand, where we needed to push and where we needed to pull back and all of those things. And then out of that, I came into this freelancing career. And so kind of a rebirth of those technical skills that I'd put on the shelf for a while. And then like we were just talking about, I didn't mean to teach. It just sort of happened. So anyways, that's the really long rambling answer that I don't even know if I properly addressed your question, but there are distinctive hats you put on, and the way I've found to be the most, I guess, effective at that is to not try to do all of them at one time or even in the same day. So like there's one day a week where I'm putting on my business thinker hat, taking care of business, looking at strategy, all those sorts of things. And there's, a few days where I'm just a developer. I'm not thinking about, any strategy or whatever. I'm just working on code. And then again, when I'm working on, say, like a Lynda course, that's all I'm doing. So fully immersing in whatever I am for a good chunk of time before I peace out and put another hat on. Did that make any sense?
It made total sense. Sense. I do want to add though that I think you are a marketer because, like when I talk about sales or whatever, there's three kinds. There's inbound, outbound, and relationships. And perhaps you don't do a lot of outbound cold calling or knocking on doors or whatever, but you definitely create a lot of content, which creates inbound leads, which is a form of that. And then, you're very involved in the WordPress community, and there's a lot of relationships and that kind of thing there. So that's really cool. And I think one of the big takeaways there is there's a big difference between like multitasking, like trying to do all that at once versus like having some structured blocks. I'm kind of anal about that stuff too, where I even have like 4-hour blocks on my calendar every week for certain things just to make sure I don't let that thing slip or whatever. So that's really cool. Well, how did you get into Lynda.com? I mean, Lynda was just acquired by LinkedIn, right? For $1 billion or something like that. Is that right?
Yeah, I can't remember what the price tag was, but a hefty sum. And then LinkedIn, the deal was just finalized here recently, but LinkedIn was acquired by Microsoft. So it's like the fish just keeps, I don't know. I think we're probably at the end of at the line in terms of big fish to keep going. And LinkedIn is going to remain its own kind of individual thing. But Lynda's been completely swallowed by LinkedIn, not in a negative way. It's just, I don't know how much longer the actual Lynda brand will stay around. But anyhow, that was not your question at all. So I used lynda.com, their training videos, to learn WordPress and to learn kind of beef up some of my technical skills when I was entering this space. And it so happened that they had one instructor in the WordPress space, and that was a fellow named Morten Rand Hendrickson. So I watched his classes, learned WordPress, and I don't know, maybe a year or two into my WordPress journey, I met Morten at a WordCamp, and it's like you on the phone. Is this really Chris Badgett? And I mean, I saw Morten from across the room, and I mean, I totally went and was just a big fangirl because for me, he was a celebrity. So I got to meet Morten and start a friendship with him, and over time, he introduced me to the folks at Lynda, and the rest is sort of history. But I think it's funny that I am now teaching what I learned from that resource. So you never know.
That's awesome. Well, is Lynda, do they do they come after you, or you have to go after them? Like, not anybody can teach on Lynda. It's not like necessarily like Udemy. So how?
Yeah, so there was an interview process, and where I'm sending in demos of me trying to teach some concept or whatnot. So there is, I mean, it's not just anybody that knocks on the door. But now that I have an established relationship with them, I can come to them with course ideas. More often than not, they're coming to me with course ideas, or refreshing older content in their library, wanting to bring some of that content to date. But if somebody ever wants to teach, they're like, if you go to lynda.com, I think at the very bottom of the thing, and they call it author versus teacher. Go click on that and apply. Worst thing they can do is tell you no.
Do you do it in person? Like, do you have to be in their green room or whatever, or can you record from home?
I go out. So they have a facility in Southern California where they do all the recording, and it's, Chris, it is state of the art. I mean, the equipment and the even the people. I mean, they're so close to LA, so they're pulling in people that are been working on Hollywood sets and stuff, and that level of production. And so they've got all these little perfectly cubed sound booths, and they would cringe if I submitted a video that looked like this right now with the halo behind me and just talking on my built-in microphone. So yeah, I go out there to do the recording. Folks like Morten, he is a full-time staff author there. He has his own setup at home, because otherwise he'd just be traveling out there all the time.
Right. That's cool. Well, how long is your average Lynda course, and then how long is the recording session for it?
Oh, that's good. That's a good question. Average course length, probably an hour and a half. And I spend about 60 hours in the booth recording to get that. And now all of that time is like the lights going, but it's me, prepping script. But even a video that eventually gets cut to like a 3-minute segment, there may be 12 minutes of recording that because I mess up or I don't say something the right way, or I didn't quite get the right message across. And oh my gosh, it's intensive. But the resulting product, and this is the thing that I really think sets Lynda apart from other online education training libraries, is that level of excellence and quality. So there is no fluff or, and awing like I am right now. I'm wasting people's time. They edit all that stuff out.
And somebody else does the editing for you at Lynda, right? Like they have
yes,
their own post-production team or whatever. That's
exactly. So it's like you let the author be an expert at whatever they're an expert in, and then other experts and that, in recording and production and all that, can do their excellent work. So you don't have to learn that, which is really nice.
Well, you mentioned something else that's interesting, and I'm going to kind of tie it into something you said earlier about Morton, but also just what you said even earlier about you didn't know you were teaching, or that's not how you approached it. I had a similar thing happen where I started making how to build a WordPress website in weekend videos. And then I just looked the other day, and it's a free course I put on Udemy many, many years ago. And there's like 10,000 people in there. I even have like one of my developers who was working for me for a while. He realized, like, after we'd been working together for like 6 months, that he learned WordPress from me. Like, and he's from Nepal, and he was living in Iceland or whatever. But I was like, this is crazy.
That's awesome.
That was just me challenging myself to make word, like, okay, I was actually doing it to kind of attract new clients. And that's when I first started freelancing. Be like, hey, Chris, I saw your YouTube videos. It looks easy, but it's actually kind of hard. Can I just pay you to do it? I'm like, yes. So, but a similar thing happened where I started blogging actually about, I created online courses around organic gardening topics with my wife, Sam, and I used a theme off of Theme Forest and an LMS theme. And I started blogging about it. And like most blog posts Chris used to write, I might get 100 people on it here or there, but then all of a sudden I was getting like thousands of people a day. And then, fast forward 4 years, my agency started specializing in online courses and membership sites, and we built a product to kind of scratch our own itch and solve some of the problems we saw in the space. It all started from just like creating content and just kind of becoming a teacher by accident and getting better at all the technology stuff. But the piece I wanted to kind of tie into related to, I teach WordPress, you teach WordPress. I saw you when I first met you in Cabo, Mexico. I was like, oh, there's Carrie Dils it's the same thing from the podcast. But there's a lot of people doing similar things. So even like you mentioned, you did something in a similar way to what Morton did, perhaps updated it. Of course, it's in your own style and flair and your own unique insights. But also I saw you at, I think it was a WordCamp US show where you were with Sean Hesketh, who also teaches WordPress.
Yes.
And Bob WP. I think you guys were being interviewed by WP Engine. But there's not, I think what my point is, even though it might be crowded, or that's not necessarily a bad thing. So how do you approach that? Or do you even worry about like trying to be unique or just trying to do the best you can do on your topic? How do you see all that?
Yeah, to me, that's not, just like you said, it's not a bad thing at all that it's a crowded space. I think there's still plenty of room there, especially with a piece of software like WordPress that's so vast. And there's so many different ways that you can approach it. Like Bob, WP Bob has taken, or Bob WP has taken very, very beginners under his wing and wants to just, demo the very basics of using a plugin or whatnot. Whereas Hesketh has gone on with his WP 101 videos and really created a solution that he can make available to, people like you and I that do client work or that used to do client work, teaching clients how to use WordPress. And then there's me, who I've got a little bit more of a technical or developer bent on teaching WordPress. And I think there's room for anybody that wants to play. I think the important thing is you can find, and just Google, how to learn WordPress, and you'll probably find a bajillion different things out there. There are different people that could teach you. But I think part of what makes an instructor unique, and why why a student might choose you versus someone else is specifically because it's you. So they're part of your tribe. Over time, they've seen your YouTube videos. Maybe they've read your content. You are a trusted face and a trusted voice. And therefore, it doesn't matter if 10 other people put out a class that's just as high quality as mine. Those are people that want to hear what I have to say, which still blows my mind. But I think that, you build a tribe, you build an audience, and then when you have something to teach them, you'll be the obvious source.
Yeah, the world is a very big place. So, people will find you. And I think I heard Chris and Lynda say that, oftentimes people do it backwards. They start getting online course or LMS software, and then they start building community, and then they start building content or whatever, or content, and then they start building community. But you should actually do it the other way around or whatever. But
absolutely.
Cool. Well, what about like the mediums? So like you do client work, you write, you podcast, you teach. Like what's up with all this like multimedia thing? Like instead of, why not be an author or why not be a podcaster, or why not be just a business person? Like how is it? I'm the same way. So maybe I'm just trying to look into the mirror here, but how does that happen to someone?
So I've actually cut out client work. I phased that out at the end of 2016, which was a big chunk of what I was doing. So that lets me focus more on, the teaching. And I think the fact that there's all these different mediums, I really don't know, Chris. It's maybe it's just curiosity to try out different formats and see what works or see what people respond to. But the thread is the same through all of them. So whether I'm writing or doing a formal course or hosting a guest with some great expertise on my podcast, those are all informational, instructional things that you could broadly put under that umbrella of teaching. So yeah, Chris, I want to affirm you that it's okay to have professional ADD. And I say that I say that so that I can feel better about myself.
That's awesome. Well, like kind of like on Lynda, you're still surrounding the same person with just different kind of offers or creations or works of art. You may be teaching something more technical in your course, but then like you have a new book that is about to come out or maybe out when the listener or viewer sees this, but it's called Real World Freelancing, the No Bullshit Survival Guide. So maybe that same user has they learn something technical from you, but now they need some business advice. So you come at it from different angles, and you're just helping the same person in different ways. What's the book all about? Like, what's the
I like that. I like. Yeah. So origin story. I actually have a colleague, Diane Kinney, that I'm working with to write the book, and it's the origin was, and I don't even remember who it was I was sitting down with, but somebody that was cranking up a new business. And so I was like, all right, get out your pen, and we're going to talk about everything. First you need to, go establish yourself as a legal entity, and then you need to separate your money into different accounts, and then you need to, and we hadn't even gotten to actually what it is you do for a living yet. We were just talking about all the business aspects that surround it. And I was like, holy crap. I wish somebody had sat me down and told me this when I was 22 years old. And so I the book is, if I could go back in time and sort of mentor a younger me, that would be who it was for. So, there's a ton of developers, designers, people in the WordPress space that want to hang out their shingle and start doing client services and make a living off of it. And while there is room to do that, I think that those are going to be a lot of candles that fade out quickly if there's no like actual business savvy underneath it, or as a foundation. And again, I don't think you need to go get your MBA. I certainly don't have one. It's just been the school of life. But that's sort of the origins of the book. And yes, so the people that I'm teaching technical things to, if a lot of them, and I know this just from surveys I've done with my readership, but a lot of them either are already freelancing or aspire to ditch their 9-to-5 and hang out their own shingle. So that's exactly who the book is for.
That's awesome. And I think that whole freelancer economy, location independent, work from home or wherever, co-working thing is like, it's just, I think we're actually still just at the beginning of what's happening there. I think the economy is really changing, and people need stuff like that. My my mom used to always say that I had to do things the hard way. And since it's already, we already have the explicit tag on this podcast episode. When I first started learning WordPress, I went to YouTube and I was like, this is bullshit. Like, it's taken me forever to like piece together all this stuff to like build a site. And I was just a user, not a developer. So then I was like, all right, I'm going to like scratch my own itch and I'm going to make like, okay, you can do it. You can do it fast. This is the critical things you need to know. And I started doing that. And then I, started publishing that in different places and stuff. But yeah, that whole, like, you don't have to do it the hard way. Like you're saying, especially in this day and age when the world is it's moving fast. It's really complicated. You need to be more and more integrated and interdisciplinary. If you're going to be some kind of expert or specialized skill, you really need to know how to run a business too and stuff like that. So that's just an awesome thing to do to write a book around.
Well, thank you. Yeah, a lot of things is maybe telling of my age, but we didn't have the internet. The internet was very, very young. So it's not like resources to learn WordPress, or technically WordPress wasn't even around at that point, but you couldn't just go YouTube how to do XYZ because there was no YouTube. So it's awesome to have all these resources, and you can now tell your mom that you don't have to learn everything the hard way.
Yeah. I mean, I'm feeling the age too. My daughter the other day pointed something, what's that? And I'm like, that's a payphone. You can actually like call somebody. But yeah, that's I think that overlap, if you were to make like a Venn diagram, like if you're doing like web development, WordPress skills, but also business, I see a lot of people, that's just how they find their unique angle or their tribe, is they overlap something. And oftentimes it may be harder to compete like at one thing, but when you find a sweet spot between two things or three things, that's really where you can start getting a brand and some uniqueness going on. So that's really cool. I
love that. That's a great way to think about it. Well, and I'm going to start doing this for my Venn diagrams.
So if you're listening, you're going to need to come on over to YouTube to see what this is. But I would encourage you, the listener, to check out realworldfreelancing.com. One of the great things about books and courses and things is that you can stand on the shoulders of giants and learn from people without necessarily making the same mistakes. You're going to make mistakes, but why not shortcut the journey? There's never been a better time to teach and learn and to leverage the experience of others. Well, where can people find out more about you, Carrie? Where do you want to send them?
CarrieDils.com is where that is the hub of all of my various hats and adventures. And then on Twitter @CDils.
At C Dills. All right. Well, thank you for coming on the show, and I appreciate you sharing the wisdom and being an inspiration to all of us out here.
Thanks so much for having me.